Power had not passed smoothly from Artaxius, but rather it had been taken by a scheming noble who had forced the crown to jump over to him via a secret marriage. It wasn't the most stable situation for the royal family, but on the other hand, the addition of the chosen heir Esarhaddon, the king's old confidant Sin-Shar-ish-Kun, and rumours that more nobles were being considered for adoption meant that the Orontid dynasty was growing fast. Prince Esarhaddon had promised to expand Armenia's influence across all of Anatolia, but a defeat at the hands of the Seleucids was a bad portent for the new administration. At last I am a grandfather, a real grandfather. So here he is, the future of House Orontid. There isn't a drop of Orontid blood in him. Oh, don't be like that. Never stopped old Artaxius, did it? Don't get me wrong, I will not be changing the family name. Of course you won't, for such an act would require my authority. I'm aware of that. In a foul mood, I see. Is this about that incident with the Seleucids? The incident was hardly an incident at all, and has been remedied at Iconium. My men are marching to finish the job as we speak. Will you be joining them? What sort of a question is that? Ah, my apologies. You are quite right to return here to attend to your son, after all. That's not why I'm here. I actually need to attend to you. What? I have never demonstrated how grateful I am to have been accepted into the royal house. That is why when you return to the Citadel, you will find a harem of hand-picked quality from across the coalition, ready to demonstrate just how well we can all work together. That's... Well, my boy, you are a valuable member of the court, aren't you? The most valuable. Artaxius liked me for other reasons, I should add. He was always focused on the duller things in life, wasn't he? I shall take my leave then. Good luck with the baby, and the battles and such. Good luck in the Citadel. Try not to make a mess. Welcome back to Wings of Eden. We're continuing our quote-unquote conquest of Anatolia. Iconium fell due to an easy auto-resolve. Now Sin-Shar-ish-Kun has arrived with the army that was hanging around down in Syria to lay siege to Myra. Not much inside, we'll just need to make the siege engines. Back at home, I'm going to start a new army under this guy, Manui Capi, the guy who looks exactly the same as Esarhaddon, mysteriously enough, and making this new army will come in very useful right now, because in that very turn, a new war starts. It's Nabatea, the real one, the big one to the south. They want to attack our little puppet state, the Tetropolis, and of course we need to stand by them. So now we've got a fairly exposed border along the south of our territory that we'll need a new army to deal with, and Manui Capi will have to go and do that for us. One upside to this war is that the Nabateans control part of Syria, which is one of our victory regions, so this may give us the chance to actually take it. The siege at Myra ended pretty easily because I could bring over Mithridates I with the forces who took Iconium to just stomp this siege. However, Sin-Shar-ish-Kun lost some pretty big units in his army in that auto-resolve. We've seen this happen before in this campaign. It seems the auto-resolve prioritizes killing the most powerful units in your army, especially Cav, and we even lost the elephants that I had recruited from the east, which is a shame because I really wanted to use them in an actual battle. Anyway, Mithridates will now move back east to support the war against Nabatea. We need to give Myra away to another faction. I've been making the Achaean League the controllers of southern Anatolia, so giving them Myra here means they now have the whole coast. Very nice. We now make it to the start of the next turn with nothing in particular happening. There's news of one of our governors, I think it is, being disloyal. It's this guy here. We're going to make things worse by refusing him a promotion. Just want to see what happens. We've also now got news that Sin-Shar-ish-Kun has successfully adopted Mithridates, achieving my goal of having 2 branches in our royal family. Mithridates needs to get a wife, and then we may be able to create a second branch in the lowest generation as well. Also, Esarhaddon is back at it again, trying to get rid of the current king, because that would make him king, and the current king has pretty much no legitimacy right now. Esarhaddon himself is going to give up on helping Pergamon siege out the last of the Seleucids, because we can get Sin-shar-ishkun to take over there instead, allowing Esarhaddon to walk back into our territory and start rebuilding his army. I get an offer of trade from Media Atropatene, not something I'd normally bother mentioning in this series, but this is remarkable because Media Atropatene really hated us for the whole campaign. It was on something like minus 180, our relationship, but I think their king died and the new one doesn't at all care that we are making them into a puppet state and forcing them to do things. You don't get the oppression debuff to your relationship. So now it looks like we're going to be happy families with the Medes at last, which will make our position very strong. The Nabateans were on the attack there. We'll have to try and stop them moving up into Ostrane. And also a new war has started when these guys out on the islands decide to invade the Achaean assembly. We're going to support our puppet state, of course. Now though, as we start the next turn, we've got a couple of funerals and a wedding as more political shifts take place. Thank you, Lords of Armenia, and friends from those loyal to our free coalition. When I heard what had happened to the late King Kampuchea, I wept as any son would weep for his father, stolen away from the fate Ahura Mazda decreed by the wickedness of man. Yes, I see no illusions in the scheme of Sin-shar-ishkun. With his claim to power buried with King Artaxius, his guilt for the nobility he stole consumed him. And yet in his regret he could think of nothing but his schemes. Here is the truth. With his last words he bade armed men to lie in wait for the king, summoned to take command of the frontier army. They misplaced their loyalty and tarnished good faith with greater treason, giving us this cause for mourning and this turning of history. We learned that Sin-shar-ishkun uttered on his deathbed, "The world tolerates tyrants in place of liberators and shall so face tyranny." That he dishonors his own king, his own brother, like this, shows how much he valued the spirit of unity on which he spoke at length for his whole life. But that was him. That was the past. I will rule according to the principles of Artaxius, the man who saw me as a mirror for his greatness. Let it be proven so. I will complete the coalition, that Armenia might have a shield against the rumblings on the edge of the world, and that the peace of the times of Great Eden may finally be granted back to us by Ahura Mazda's grace. I humbly ask that you follow me on this road, and serve my family with distinction. No philosopher king has ever asked for, or needed, anything more. To deal with this Nabatean army sneaking up towards Edessa, I'm going to first move over Mithridates. He couldn't quite reach the enemy army, but we can stand next to the city, so that will protect it against attack. I could almost reach him also with Manu Kapi, this new Esarhaddon lookalike. For some reason I started setting up an ambush on the other side of the town. Not quite sure what the plan with that was. Anyway, after some brief peace negotiations that failed, the Nabatean army moves to the east and goes after our Nabatea. It's Nabatea on Nabatea action right here. At least they didn't move very far, so we can easily go after them. At the start of the next turn, the disloyal guy we had in our court apparently starts a civil war, but you'll see this is a much smaller deal than it looks like. What he actually did is join the faction Armenian nobles. There he is standing there. So I guess the game wanted to spawn Armenian nobles as a faction at war with us, but because it already existed as our puppet state, the rebels just immediately became our puppet state as well, and actually nothing happened. I guess what happened is we no longer have control of Amida there, but that's not a big deal. Didn't used to have control of it anyway. We'll now start trading with them, because for some reason I wasn't trading with my own puppet state, and there we have it. The civil war is apparently over. Now back to the Nabatean situation. With Mithridates, I want to move his army down to the south, because as I said, we want to take Palmyra there as it is in Syria, one of our victory provinces. It's actually already been destroyed by the looks of things, or very heavily sacked. It's not making any money, and the buildings there are completely wrecked, so I think it's just a depopulated ruin, but we'll go and install one of our allies there, just to get our victory condition. And then we're going to move over the army under Manui Kapi to go after the Nabateans. We've got a balance bar that looks extremely easy for us, but I suspected this was just because the enemy commander was a high level, and that tends to mess up the balance bar if your commander is a low level. And indeed, when I actually do the fight manually, things look pretty even. Wanted to do it manually just because this is a little bit different. We're fighting an army with lots of trash units like we have, but this time actually we've got better units than usual, so in some ways the tables are turning. Instead of horse archers, I brought Javcav in this army, which proves to be a mistake. They're actually not very useful Javcav, since the Javs aren't as powerful as they are in base Attila. You can see we've got this nice big line of heavy spearmen instead of levies now. It's a serious force. These units are actually pretty good. They've got nice big tower shields, they're armoured, and they've got high morale. The enemy try a camel attack on our left, but since our spears have a bonus against camels, that's okay, we'll just win. On the other side, more camels are coming in, and I'm trying to skirmish against them with my Javcav, but not achieving very much. My cataphracts, who were stationed on the left, go in to attack the camels. Camels do have a bonus against cavalry, but it's not going to be enough to deal with such a heavy attack. The camels on the right start making a rear attack. They drive away my archers, and come in to attack my spear line from behind. Since the enemy infantry isn't here though, this won't really do anything. Our spears just turn round and will now fight the camels with an advantage, and as long as we kill them before we get charged frontally, that's fine, and indeed that is going to be the case. Once the enemy infantry show up, we see another case where skirmishers just charge into melee rather than throwing their jabs at us, which is great. I wonder if it's something to do with the Ancient Empire's AI, because they did change the AI quite a lot for this mod. Where they are attacking us at range, our new tower-shielded front line is able to hold out against it. We'll take much lower losses than usual against ranged attacks due to our high missile block chance with those shields, and once the fights start, we have the melee advantage as well. Our right flank wasn't engaged, so we start folding around for some outflanking action. My Javcav went to go and harass the enemy commander out here. He's just chasing them around, he'll never catch them, and while we're not killing him very fast, at least it's keeping him out of the affairs over here. Some of my cataphracts go to drive away the enemy's ranged units, and others charge in to get some juicy rear attacks on the enemy's low-level spear units. They've got skirmishers and levied spears in melee. That's just going to get ruined once the cataphracts get in behind them and destroy their morale. There we take out pretty much the entire enemy line with a cataphract charge. Down go those enemy units, and down goes the enemy left flank. Now we can surround the centre even more. It looks like victory is already in the bag at this point. One last thing I wanted to mention is the way that our heavy spear unit charges. They charge with extreme discipline, as you can see. They want to keep their shield up and their bodies hidden, so they do this weird comedy walk. Not the most effective looking charge. Perhaps they're more of a defensive unit, but at least they're okay in melee. So now, yes, we just have to surround what remains of the enemy army, absolutely annihilate their ranged units with our cataphracts, which should be fine, and we'll be all sorted here.
Yes, yes, flee before me. Flee from the flames that would purge you today, and face even greater despair when they reach you tomorrow. Greater, grander, and more alive with the energies of purification than ever. They really thought they could defy the Armenian Empire. The burden of humanity upon the mind of Ahura Mazda is lightened by the loss of these scum. I pledge that their corpses shall not go to waste. I will follow my master's commands and ensure their backbones are harvested. Then they shall render my transformation complete. There will be no doubt of who it was who won this victory, and all those to come. Yes, they shall gaze upon the face that leads them and see their king. See the man who was truly gifted the mandate of Artaxias. I am the real Esarhaddon, and I shall have what is owed to be paid with interest. What better proof can there be of my destiny to champion Armenia than to gather up the spines of her enemies as tribute? Not even these desert fools will be able to deny the truth.
Once we get to the result, things are looking pretty good. We wiped out most of the enemy army, and looking at our side, the losses are minimal. These new heavy spearmen are pretty decent, they can hold their own in combat. We could even get a few men back using the take on warriors thing, and overall I think we barely lost any men at all in that conflict. We can't go after the survivors because they crossed a river, but we'll get them at some point. There's only a few men there, so unlikely to be any threat. Now jumping over to the west, the original Esarhaddon needs to take to the seas. We're at war with the islands off to the west, so I thought I'll actually sail out and try and attack one of them to perhaps settle the war directly over here. At the start of the next turn, there's good news for the real Esarhaddon. He's got a new son, so the royal family's looking a bit more stable now. 2 sons to pick from, so even if one dies, things will still be okay. That siege against the Seleucids in Anatolia is still going on, by the way. For whatever reason, Pergamon just won't attack, even though we have overwhelming strength in the area. Esarhaddon is going to go for the attack now, because it's the next turn. The forces that were defending the port actually left during the end turn sequence, so this is the perfect chance to attack. So perfect, in fact, that there's really nothing here. They've got a couple of half-dead units and some half-dead ships. I wanted to do a port assault because they're somewhat interesting, but I thought it's not worth the loading time for such an easy battle. But then when I auto-resolved it, I actually lost 3 units. They hammered us pretty hard, which is fair actually, because we might have lost a couple of transports while landing to the enemy's ships if the AI didn't just land them immediately themselves, which I think they usually do. Anyway, obviously we took the town, so that was easy enough. Then I went to these guys and asked for a peace treaty, and it actually got them to be my puppet state if I threw in a load of money, so that's going to really secure peace and secure us a bit more of an income. We need to give away the territory we just took, of course. I'm going to give that over to the Achaean Assembly again, so they've got a pretty decent empire building up over here. We can hopefully expect no more trouble from the islands, and Esarhaddon can return home. Mithridates advances to find that indeed it's just a load of ruins in front of him, so we walk in and occupy a new region. There are 2 more Nabatean places to the south, but neither are in victory regions, so I'm not so concerned about that area. What I am concerned with is giving away the province we just took, the region we just took, sorry. But it seems that there's a limit on giving away regions. It's just greyed out, and I think it's because I've already done a trade this turn. Maybe you can only do it once per turn, not quite sure, since I didn't actually read the mod description. So we'll have to occupy this region for at least this turn, although admittedly that doesn't really mean anything for our rules because it's a destroyed place that has 0 income, so it doesn't make any difference on a practical level. Now we move out and take out the survivors of the Nabatean army that we defeated before, and after that I was able to puppet state Nabatea. I had to give them a whole load of money, but there's nothing else to do with it, and this is a pretty good purchase because they've got 3 or 4 regions down there, all along our southern border, and the deal goes through. There we have it. That's a pretty big puppet state to suddenly gain. Now then, the situation in the south should be really secure as long as they don't betray us, and so far our puppet states have been pretty good to us. You can see it's all of this desert over here is now part of our little coalition. This gives us a buffer between us and the Egyptians in case they want to get up to any antics. Overall, I think we're looking at a very secure situation. Now we just need to secure Tyros, and then Syria will be under our control, and we'll have done everything we need to do down there. Still need to get that siege completed in Anatolia as well, and this happens to be the turn when things finally progress. The Pergamon army decides to attack. Looks like they were waiting for the enemy to get starved out, because the men inside are all depleted now. The balance bar is pretty far in our favour, so we'll just throw our men in to help them out with that attack. And indeed this one goes without any hitches or anything, we just take them down for minimal losses. That means Pergamon will occupy this place, and the Seleucids are now kicked out of Anatolia. They are only now down in the bottom right hand corner of the map. But from that location they do start making a bit of a comeback, and we'll see that happening more and more. Once they're just focused on one area, they actually seem to be able to make progress, so we will have more conflict with them in the future. Now as for the Tyros situation, they are allied to Ta-Shamu, who currently control what used to be the Ptolemaic kingdom, so we can't just attack them, we can't do an aggressive war, but we can make it look like it's Bactria's fault. We'll get Bactria to put us into their war against Tyros that they apparently have for some reason, and now that doesn't involve any allies or anything, a classic Total War exploit, and we can just go for the attack. Mithridates is ready, so let's get moving. On the way there, I spot that they've got a small army outside their town, so I change target. Now we can do a siege draw-out. We attack the small army, and the garrison will get pulled out into the field. If we can take everything out, it will then be a nice easy siege. Their army composition is interesting. It's pretty much just loads and loads of militia. So many that it might be a problem, because we've only got like 6 melee units, and they're going to have 20 plus. So there is a risk here that we'll just be surrounded.
I'm here to stop your relentless bullying. What in Apollo's name are you talking about? I speak of the oppressed Bactrian people against whom you have so brutally waged war. Armenia is dedicated to securing a world in which peoples live side by side peacefully. Therefore, we have agreed to hear the plea of our eastern brethren and come put a stop to your madness. Where are you from? You're not Armenian. Who speaks so freely to a son of Alexander? I am descended from a pile of Pontic kings, and right now I am a prince of the kingdom of Armenia. How do you like me now? You're joking about all this. You can't be, and you can't possibly justify this invasion. I am, I can, I will, I did, I'm doing, young man. Sounds like you ain't itching to surrender, so I'm gonna have to do this in what people will later call the old-fashioned way. The people will not stand for this. Every citizen will take up a spear against this tyranny. Well, that's a crying shame. It really is. But you see, I'm more concerned with how the doctor won't let me drink wine on account of this damn gout. You ever had gout? Gout? Get out! That's a good one. Now shut up and come fight me before I burn your little camp up on that yonder hill.
Most of the enemy army were reinforcements, and what they wanted to do was run across the whole map to the high ground on the east side where their initial units had deployed. So what I did is put my army in between those two forces to intercept the reinforcements and somewhat fight them downhill, while also exposing our rear to attack from the guys up the hill, but fortunately they're not paying any attention right now. So we close in to engage with this huge blob of militia. It's mostly all the same unit, and most of them can throw javelins. Luckily, our lines of heavy spearmen have that decent missile block chance, so while we get hit by loads of javelins, it doesn't do any substantial damage, and our return fire from all of our archers and slingers is going to do massive damage to the enemy, especially when they're turning their backs at us all the time, and because they've got all these units standing on top of each other, it makes it hard for our men to miss, so we're getting some very efficient volleys here. Then I charge in onto the flank of this blob, and we immediately start to see routes. We can outflank them down the hill and chase off their archers. My cav will be doing that as well, and many of these units just rout upon contact. They don't want to be in melee with our superior spearmen. Very quickly, the lower side of the enemy formation is just going to be cleared out, and we can start folding around up here. At the upper end of the formation, things don't look so good. We've got just one unit holding off 4 or 5 other units at the same time, but since everything else pretty much routed instantly, this proved to be not much of an issue. We can quickly support them. Also, a lot of these units were standing around because they wanted to throw their jabs, and then just routed due to the volume of arrow fire we could put on them. They didn't even want to participate in the melee after taking all of those losses, meaning things were cleared up here pretty easily actually. Overall, this attack on the enemy's reinforcement column has gone way better than expected, and only now do I start deploying things like our cataphracts to attack units that are not paying attention. That's going to rout the last unit that was actually fighting, and now it's just a huge slaughter as our horse archers chase down routing units and kill them to reduce the size of the enemy garrison. They had a couple of units returning from routing coming up the hill there. I diverted a few units to pay attention to them, while everyone else needs to look up the hill, because finally, after the slaughter's pretty much over, they did bring down their initial army. I'm putting together a scrappy formation here that's actually not very good, plus the enemy have a downhill charge to use on us. Unfortunately, they aren't going to actually use it. They run up to us as if they're going to. I get the men to go into shield wall formation to receive it, but they stop right in front of us. Looks like they're having second thoughts about fighting our superior spears. That's fine because we have the ranged advantage in this battle, so a delay will favour us. We can kill a few more enemies before things get started. You can see we're all just lined up looking at each other, and eventually I realised it's because the enemy want to throw their javelins at me. It just took them a long time to technically finish moving so they could start firing. They throw the jabs forwards and we do take losses, but again those big shields block loads of javelins. It doesn't do all that much, and now the melees will start where things should be in our favour. Here in the rough centre of our formation, some enemy elite cav surrounds one of my spear units, but then I can counter surround by bringing in my reserve spear unit from back there and my cataphracts. In the following melee, we rout the enemy general, and the rest of the army routs as well at this point. They had lots of units that were still coming down the hill that just never really joined the battle and decided to leg it, and the units that had engaged were being destroyed because I rear attacked them with cataphracts, as we see here. There we go then, a surprisingly easy heroic victory. It went way better than expected, and that means we're very close to securing all of the territory we need to get our victory condition. That is all for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and a very special thanks to all officially Devon patrons. Join me to see just how long we hold on to our victory territories for in the next part of Wings of Eden.